The snow was falling heavy, the wind was howling like a wild beast, and the night was cold enough to freeze stone on that night. A tiny figure walked slowly through the white storm. Her steps were weak, her little legs shaking, her breath thin and broken. She was not human, she was not strong. She was a small alien child, alone and lost. Her skin was pale silver. Almost glowing in the darkness, her eyes were bright like twin stars, but filled with fear and hunger. Her small hands were blue from the cold, her body wrapped in torn cloth that gave no warmth. She was only a child, an orphan with no family, no home, and nowhere to go. The snow buried her footprints as soon as she made them. It was like the world wanted to erase her. To make her vanish forever, she tried to call out, but her voice was too weak. No one answered, no one cared. Her people were gone, destroyed in the last war. The humans said the aliens were dangerous, enemies untrustworthy, so why would anyone save her? The little alien girl fell on her knees. Her eyes blinked slowly. Her body too tired to fight the cold anymore. The storm screamed louder, but inside her ears there was only silence. She curled into a ball, hugging herself as if she could create her own warmth. But she could not. Her eyes closed, she whispered something in her own language, a soft word like a prayer. Then she lay still in the snow, her breath fading. The night was long, the storm cruel, and death was close. But then footsteps came, heavy and steady. Not the small steps of a child, but the boots of a grown man. Through the snow, a tall shadow appeared, a human soldier, strong and tired. His face was hidden under a hood, his eyes sharp from years of war. He was a man who had seen death too many times. He was used to walking past broken things. He was used to obeying orders, and the order was simple: never help an alien. The soldier stopped when he saw the small figure lying in the snow. At first he thought it was a trick, maybe a trap. Maybe the enemy was using a child to catch the weak-hearted. But when he looked closer, he saw her tiny chest rising slowly. She was alive, but only barely, her small body shaking like a candle about to die. The man's heart turned heavy. He knew what he should do. He should walk away. He should let the storm finish its work. That was safer, that was easier. That was what the world expected him to do. But for some reason his feet refused to move. He remembered another night long ago. He remembered the sound of his own daughter crying before she was taken from him by war. He remembered how helpless she looked in his arms, and when he looked at this alien child, alone in the snow, he felt the same pain, the same weight in his chest. The soldier knelt beside her. Her skin was freezing cold, her lips trembling even in sleep without thinking. He pulled off his heavy coat and placed it over her tiny body. The coat was warm, rough, and smelled of smoke and iron. The moment it touched her, the child stirred. Her eyes opened just a little, glowing weakly like dying stars. She looked up at him, confused, afraid. Then she closed her eyes again, too tired to fight the sleep. The soldier sighed. He knew what this meant. If anyone saw him helping her, he would be called a traitor. If his commander found out, he could be punished. Maybe even killed, but still, he lifted her gently in his arms. She was so light, so fragile, like she might break if the wind pushed too hard. He pulled the coat tighter around her, shielding her from the storm, and then he turned, walking into the night, carrying the child who was not his behind them. The snow covered the place where she had fallen, like the world wanted to erase the truth, but the truth was still alive. A soldier had chosen to protect an alien child. A man had chosen to be human, even when the world told him not to. The storm raged on, the night was dark, but in his arms was a spark of hope. The question was no longer if the child would survive the night. The question was what would happen next. Why did this hardened soldier stop for an alien child? And what secret did the child carry that would soon change both of their lives forever? The fire cracked inside the old cabin. Throwing shadows across the wooden walls, the soldier sat near it, silent, his back straight, his eyes sharp. In his arms lay the alien child, wrapped tightly in his heavy coat. Her breathing was weak but steady now, her small chest rising and falling like a tired bird. The soldier's name was Marcus, a man who had survived too many battles, a man who had buried too many friends. He was used to blood, used to silence, used to losing, but tonight felt different. Tonight he was holding life in his arms, life that he was not supposed to protect. Marcus looked down at her. Her face was soft, not like the monsters they had told him about in the army camps. Her skin shone faintly in the firelight, her small hands twitching in sleep. She looked like any other child, scared, hungry, and alone. Yet Marcus knew what she was: an alien, an enemy, a danger. The law was clear: never help them, never trust them. But then why did his heart feel heavy? Why did his hands refuse to let her go? Marcus stood slowly, pacing across the cabin floor. He told himself it was only for tonight. He told himself that once the storm ended, he would decide what to do. But deep inside he knew that was a lie. The child stirred in her sleep. A soft whisper slipped from her lips, words not human. Her voice was weak but filled with sadness. Marcus froze, listening carefully. It was not a cry for war. It was not a curse. It sounded like a prayer. A small, broken prayer of someone who had already lost everything. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He remembered another voice, his daughter's voice years ago. She used to whisper songs when she was afraid. But then the war came, the bombs fell, and his family was gone. All he had left were medals, scars, and silence. Now here he was, standing in the middle of a storm, with an alien child in his care, a child who should remind him of the enemy, but instead reminded him of what he had lost. The firelight flickered, and Marcus made his choice. He placed the child carefully on the bed in the corner of the cabin. He tucked the coat around her, making sure the cold could not touch her again. Then he sat down near the door, his rifle resting on his knees. If anyone came, if anyone asked, he would fight, not for glory, not for orders, but for the small life breathing in the dark. Hours passed, the storm screamed outside. Marcus did not sleep. He kept his eyes on the child, watching her fragile form every time she stirred. He wondered if she would wake every time she coughed. His hand tightened around the rifle. He was not afraid of her. He was afraid of losing her. The thought surprised him. Why should he care? Why should a battle-worn soldier, a man with nothing left, care for an alien girl he found in the snow? Morning came slow. The storm calmed. The first light broke through the cracks of the cabin. The girl's eyes opened. They were bright, silver-like stars. But filled with fear when she saw Marcus, she pushed back against the wall, clutching the coat tighter around herself. Marcus raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. His voice was calm, deep, steady. "You're safe," he said. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. Minutes passed, silence heavy between them. Then she pointed to herself, whispering one word. "Lyra." Marcus blinked. Her name. She had given him her name. He nodded once, pointing to his own chest. "Marcus," he said. The girl's lips trembled, but she repeated softly, "Marcus." It was the first bridge between them, small but real. Later, when Marcus gave her a piece of dry bread, she hesitated. Her people had been hunted, betrayed, treated like beasts. But hunger was stronger than fear. She ate slowly, watching him with careful eyes, and when she was done, she reached into her torn clothes and pulled out something, a necklace thin and broken, holding a small crystal that glowed faintly. Marcus frowned. It was alien technology, rare and valuable, the kind of thing that soldiers killed for, the kind of thing that could start another war. Lyra held it close, her small fingers trembling. She whispered something, her voice shaking. Marcus did not understand her words, but he understood her fear. This crystal was important. This crystal was dangerous, and this child carried it. Marcus felt his stomach turn. By saving her, he had stepped into something far bigger than he could control. He looked at her again. She was not just a lost child. She was a secret, a living target. If anyone found out, she would not only die, he would die with her. Yet when he thought about giving her up, his chest burned. He could not do it. He would not do it. The choice was made. Even if he did not speak it out loud, Marcus stood near the door, looking out at the frozen world. The storm was gone, but new dangers were waiting. The army patrols, the hunters, the commanders, they would never forgive him for what he had done. But Marcus did not care anymore. For the first time in years, he felt alive. For the first time in years, he had someone to protect behind him. The child whispered softly, "Marcus." Her voice was weak, but it carried warmth. And Marcus, the soldier who once had nothing, now had a reason to fight again. The sun rose weak over the frozen land. The storm had ended, but the world outside was still white and silent. Marcus stood at the cabin door, his rifle resting against the wall. His eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and cautious. He had lived through enough wars to know peace never lasted long. Behind him, the alien child stirred. Her small body shifted under the heavy coat, her silver eyes blinking open. For a moment, she simply watched the fire. The way it danced and cracked, she seemed almost peaceful, like any other child. But Marcus knew better. This girl was different. This girl carried something the world would kill for. He turned back inside, his boots heavy on the old floorboards. The girl pulled the coat tighter around herself. Her hands clutched the small, glowing crystal hanging from her necklace. Marcus noticed how fiercely she held it. It was not just jewelry, it was her life, her memory, her secret, Lyra, he said slowly, pointing at her. The girl nodded, her lips trembling. Lyra! Then she pointed at him, her voice soft. Marcus. It was the second time she had spoken his name, and each time, it felt like a small stone laid on a fragile bridge between them. Marcus crouched down so he was closer to her. He pointed at the crystal, his eyes serious. What is it? He asked. Lyra looked down at it, her little hands covering it protectively. She shook her head, whispering words in her own language. Marcus could not understand them, but he understood her fear. Whatever that crystal was, it was important. Important enough that she would risk everything to protect it. The soldier leaned back, sighing. He was no stranger to alien technology. He had seen weapons that could cut through tanks. He had seen machines that could move faster than any human ship. If this child carried something even half as powerful, then keeping her alive was not just dangerous, it was impossible. But then Lyra did something unexpected. She touched the crystal gently and suddenly it glowed brighter. The cabin filled with a soft light. Marcus raised his hand to shield his eyes. Shapes appeared in the air, shimmering like smoke made of stars. It was a map, a star map spinning slowly above them. Planets, lines, glowing paths, and in the center, a mark that pulsed like a heartbeat. Marcus stared in silence. He had seen maps before, but nothing like this. This was ancient, alive technology that should not exist anymore. Technology that humans would kill to own. Lyra's eyes shone as she looked at the map. Her small finger reached out, pointing to the glowing mark. She whispered a word, home. Her voice cracked on the last sound. It was not just a place, it was the last memory of her people. The last hope of her kind. Marcus's chest tightened. He understood now. She was not just an orphan. She was a carrier of knowledge. She held the last key to a world long destroyed. If anyone found out, she would not be treated as a child. She would be taken, used, broken, and that crystal would be stolen, turned into a weapon, turned into another war. The map faded slowly, the light sinking back into the crystal. The cabin grew dark again, only the fire crackling in the silence. Marcus sat heavily on the chair, his mind racing. He had fought for his commanders, he had obeyed his orders. He had killed for flags and leaders. But now, for the first time, he felt a different weight. A responsibility that was not about war, but about life. The child watched him carefully. She did not smile, she did not relax, she still feared him. But in her eyes there was also a spark of trust. A spark that said she believed he would not betray her. Not yet. Marcus rubbed his face with his hands. He could not believe how fast his world had changed. Only last night he was walking through the snow, alone, broken, tired, and now, less than a day later, he was the protector of an alien orphan, a guardian of a secret that could change the galaxy. Suddenly, a sound outside snapped him back to reality. The crunch of boots on snow, voices carried by the cold air. Human voices, sharp and commanding. Marcus froze, his heart pounding. They were patrols. The army was near. Lyra's eyes widened. She clutched the crystal close to her chest, her body trembling. Marcus raised a finger to his lips. Quiet, he whispered. She nodded quickly, her small hands shaking. The voices outside grew closer. Marcus grabbed his rifle, his body tense. If they came inside, they would see her. If they saw her, they would kill her. Or worse, take her. And then the secret would be lost forever. The soldier's mind raced. He could hand her over, that would save him. That would clear his name. That would make everything simple again. But when he looked back at her small frame, her wide, frightened eyes, her crystal clutched like it was the only piece of her heart left. He knew he could never do it. Marcus took a deep breath. The choice was no longer about rules. It was no longer about orders. It was about what kind of man he wanted to be. A soldier who walked away, or a man who stood against the world. For a child who had nothing, the voices outside grew louder. The knock on the cabin door echoed like thunder, and Marcus, The man who thought he had nothing left to lose realized he had everything to protect. The cabin door shook with the sound of fists pounding against the wood. The voices outside were sharp, cold, and full of authority. "Open up! Patrol check, hurry!" Marcus's grip tightened on his rifle, his heart beating fast. He looked at the child, Lyra, curled on the bed. Her hands pressed tightly around the glowing crystal, her silver eyes wide with terror. She whispered something in her language, her voice trembling like the firelight. Marcus raised a finger to his lips. Motioning her to stay quiet, he moved slowly toward the door, every step heavy with the weight of his choice. If he opened it, they would see her. If he refused, they would break it down either way. Danger was already inside these walls. The pounding grew louder. "Marcus, we know you're in there." His chest tightened. They knew his name. That meant they were not just a random patrol. They were searching for something, or someone. Marcus forced his voice steady. "What do you want?" From outside came the answer. "Orders are clear. We're searching for alien strays." "Open the door now." The soldier's eyes flicked back to Lyra. She shook her head quickly, whispering again, "No, no." Marcus's hands trembled for the first time in years. He had fought in countless battles. He had faced enemies with guns, bombs, and blades, but this was different. This was not about survival. This was about betrayal. If he handed her over, he would be safe, but if he didn't, he would be marked as a traitor. Hunted by his own people, the door rattled. The lock shook under the force of heavy boots. Marcus's body acted before his mind. He pulled Lyra from the bed, tucking her under his coat. Her tiny body pressed against his chest, her breathing fast and frightened. "Quiet," he whispered. Then he moved toward the trap door under the cabin floor, a hidden place he had once used to store weapons and food. Now it would be their only chance. The door burst open behind them. Cold air and snow rushed in with the soldiers. Their boots thundered across the wooden floor. "Marcus, what are you hiding?" The leader's voice was sharp, suspicious. His eyes scanned the room. The bed was empty, the fire crackled, but something felt wrong. Marcus held his breath in the dark beneath the floorboards. Lyra's small hand clutched his sleeve tightly. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Marcus covered them gently with his hand, praying the soldiers wouldn't notice. Above, heavy boots stomped, chairs were overturned, cabinets opened, wood splintered. One soldier muttered, "Maybe he's just out here waiting out the storm." But the leader wasn't convinced. "Check everything," he barked. "The command says there's an alien loose nearby. If he's hiding it, he's as good as dead." Marcus's teeth clenched. His finger rested on the trigger of his rifle. If they found her, he would fight, even if it meant his own death. Minutes stretched like hours. The soldiers searched, cursed, argued, then finally, the leader spat on the floor. "Nothing here, move out!" If Marcus is hiding something, he won't hide it for long. Their boots pounded again, and the door slammed shut. The silence that followed was heavier than any noise. Marcus exhaled slowly. His arms relaxed, but his heart was still racing. He looked down at Lyra. Her eyes were filled with tears. Not just of fear, but of guilt, she whispered in broken words. "They kill me." Her small body trembled harder. As if she blamed herself for the danger, Marcus pulled her closer. Shaking his head, "No," he said firmly. "They'll have to go through me first." That night the storm outside had calmed. But inside Marcus's mind, the storm only grew stronger. He knew now there was no turning back. The soldiers would return, the command would send more. And once they suspected him, they would never stop. Lyra sat by the fire, staring into the flames, her necklace still glowing faintly. Marcus watched her, wondering what kind of future lay in that tiny crystal. Was it hope, or was it destruction waiting to happen? The next morning, the sound of distant engines echoed across the snow. Patrol ships flying low, their searchlights cutting through the mist. Marcus knew they were not giving up. They were hunting, and this time they would not miss. He packed quickly: food, water, ammo, blankets. Every movement sharp and fast. Lyra watched him with wide eyes. Her small voice broke the silence. "Run?" Marcus looked at her. He hesitated for only a second, then nodded. "Yes, run." He lifted her onto his back, wrapping the coat around both of them. The cabin that had given them one night of safety now felt like a trap. They stepped out into the snow. The air was sharp, the world endless and white. Behind them, the engines grew louder. Hunters in the snow, soldiers of his own kind, and Marcus, Once their loyal weapon was now their prey. Each step he took was heavy, but inside his chest, there was no fear, only fire, because he was not running to save himself. He was running to protect the child who had nothing, the child who carried hope. And he knew one thing for certain. The hunters would not stop, but neither would he. The forest was dark and heavy with snow. Marcus pushed forward, his boots sinking deep into the white ground. On his back, wrapped in his thick coat, the small alien child clung to him, her arms around his neck, her breath warm against his shoulder. Behind them, the sound of patrol engines echoed faintly. The hunters had not given up, but the storm in the forest gave Marcus a small advantage. When the sun finally dipped low, Marcus found a cave hidden among tall rocks. The mouth was narrow, almost invisible beneath the snow. He slipped inside carefully. Placing Lyra down near the wall, her face was pale, her silver eyes dull with exhaustion. She had not spoken much since the soldiers nearly found them. Marcus lit a small fire, its glow chasing away the darkness. The warmth filled the cave, and for the first time since morning, Lyra let out a shaky sigh. Marcus sat across from her, silent. He was not good with words anymore. War had taken that part of him long ago, but as he watched her tiny hands holding the glowing crystal tight, something stirred inside him. Something he thought had died with his family. After a while, he broke a piece of dried meat and handed it to her. At first she hesitated, her eyes suspicious. But hunger was stronger than fear. She took it, chewing slowly. Her eyes never leaving his face, Marcus spoke softly. Food. He tapped the meat with his finger, then pointed to his mouth. Food. Lyra blinked, then whispered. Food. Her voice was small but clear. A bridge, a word they now shared from that moment. The silence between them grew less heavy. Each day as they moved deeper into the wilderness, Marcus taught her simple words. Water, fire, sky, safe, run. She repeated them carefully, her tongue stumbling but trying, and in return, she began to whisper words in her own language. Strange but soft, filled with music. Marcus listened, repeating them clumsily. Each time Lyra laughed quietly, her fear melting just a little more. At night when the fire crackled low, Lyra sometimes sang. Her voice was thin but carried a haunting beauty. The songs had no words Marcus could understand, but the feeling was clear. They were songs of sorrow, songs of memories lost, songs of a home destroyed. Marcus would close his eyes, listening, and for the first time in years he felt something other than emptiness. One evening, as snow fell gently outside the cave, Lyra touched the crystal again. It glowed softly, the cave filling with pale light. The star map appeared once more. Spinning slowly, Marcus stared at it, his jaw tight. He had seen maps, he had followed them into battles. But this was different, this was alive, this was hope. Lyra pointed to the glowing center again, whispering, Home. Her voice broke. Tears sliding down her silver cheeks, Marcus felt his chest tighten. He wanted to tell her that home was gone, that nothing remained after the war. But when he looked at her trembling hands, he couldn't, because for her, that glowing star was not just a place, it was her last piece of family, her last dream, her reason to keep breathing. Home, Marcus repeated softly. The word felt strange on his tongue. But when Lyra looked up at him, her eyes wide with hope, he realized it was the only word that mattered. That night, as the wind howled outside, Marcus sat awake, his rifle across his lap. He thought about his choices, about how far he had fallen from the soldier he once was. He was supposed to be a weapon, obey orders, fight enemies, destroy threats, but here he was, protecting an enemy child. Teaching her words, sharing his fire. Was he a traitor now? Or was he finally human again? The answer came in the smallest way. When Lyra, half asleep, leaned against him, her small hand resting on his arm, she whispered softly, Safe. It was a word he had taught her, but hearing it from her lips felt like something more. It was trust, it was bond, and Marcus knew then that he would never let her go. Days passed, each one harder than the last. The patrols grew closer, their ships circling the skies. Tracks in the snow reminded Marcus that hunters were near. But each time danger pressed closer, he and Lyra moved as one. She no longer froze with fear when he said, Run! She no longer cried when the sounds of engines filled the air, because she trusted him now. And he carried that trust like a shield on the fifth night, as they rested in a deeper cave hidden under icy cliffs. Lyra reached into her coat and placed the crystal in Marcus's hand. His eyes widened. "Why?" he asked softly. Her words were broken but clear enough. "Trust." "Mark is safe." The crystal pulsed gently in his palm, warm, alive, a symbol not just of her people, but of the bond between them. Marcus closed his fist around it. He had once fought for medals, for commands, for survival. But this small crystal in his hand felt heavier than all of them, because it was not just power, it was a promise to a child who had nothing, that she was no longer alone, that no matter what came next, he would stand between her and the world. The hunters were still out there. The war was not over, the danger was only growing. But inside that cave, in the glow of the crystal, two broken lives had found each other, and together, they had built something stronger than fear, something the hunters could never take away. A bond of trust. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. Marcus and Lyra had found shelter in a narrow valley. Hidden by heavy snow and tall pines, the fire burned low, their breaths fogging in the cold air. For days they had moved carefully, avoiding patrols, hiding from searchlights. Marcus thought maybe, just maybe, they had slipped past the hunters. But peace was never meant to last, not for a soldier. Not for a child carrying a secret crystal that could change everything. Marcus crouched near the fire, sharpening his knife. Lyra sat across from him, humming softly. Her silver eyes watched the flames, the glow reflecting on the crystal in her hands. That fragile moment of calm was broken when Marcus heard a sound. Boots crunching in the snow. Too many boots, too close. He stood quickly, motioning to Lyra. "Quiet," he whispered. She clutched the crystal and moved closer to him, her small body shaking, but before Marcus could act, shadows filled the mouth of the valley. Soldiers, human soldiers, stepped out, rifles raised, their armor shining in the pale moonlight. "Marcus," a voice shouted. It was harsh, commanding, familiar. Captain Rourke, a man Marcus had once fought beside. A man who had dragged him out of fire in the old war, now standing against him with steel in his eyes. "You've gone too far." "Old friend," Rourke growled. "We gave you everything. A rank, a uniform, a purpose. And this is how you repay us? Hiding the enemy? Protecting it?" Marcus's hand tightened on his rifle. His voice was low, steady. "She's just a child." Rourke spat on the ground. "Don't fool yourself. That thing is no child. It's a weapon. Look at what it carries." His eyes flicked to the glowing crystal in Lyra's trembling hands. "Do you even know what that is? Command wants it. That's why we're here." Marcus stepped in front of Lyra, his body blocking her completely. "She's not a weapon. She's alive. She's scared. And she's under my protection." The soldiers around Rourke raised their rifles higher. One muttered, "Traitor," under his breath. Another sneered. Always knew Marcus would break one day. Lyra clutched Marcus's coat, her small voice whispering, "Marcus, safe?" He glanced back at her, his jaw tight. Yes, safe. But his heart hammered with doubt, because he knew there was no safety left. "Not here, not now," Rourke stepped forward, his hand on his sidearm. "Stand down, Marcus. Give us the creature. Hand over the crystal. Do this and I'll make sure command shows you mercy." Marcus stared at him. Silent, he thought of his daughter, long gone. He thought of Lyra, who now trusted him with everything she had left. And he knew mercy from command was nothing but another lie. "No," Marcus said finally. The word cut through the night like a blade. Rourke's face hardened. "Then you're a dead man." The valley erupted in gunfire. Marcus pulled Lyra down behind a fallen log, bullets sparking off stone. His rifle roared in return, sharp and controlled. He moved with the skill of a soldier who had nothing left to lose. Each shot counted, each movement fierce. But there were too many, far too many. "Run," Marcus barked, pushing Lyra toward the trees. She hesitated, fear freezing her legs, but when she saw the fire in his eyes, she obeyed. Her small form darted into the snow. Clutching the crystal, Marcus covered her, his rifle spitting fire until the magazine clicked empty. The soldiers surged forward. One tackled Marcus to the ground. Another slammed a rifle butt into his ribs. Pain exploded in his chest, but Marcus fought back, fists and steel. He was outnumbered, but he fought like a cornered wolf. Lyra's scream cut through the chaos. "Marcus!" He twisted, blood on his lip. Through the blur, he saw her running. But a soldier had grabbed her, tearing the crystal from her hands. Her cry echoed across the valley, sharp and broken. "No! No!" Rage filled Marcus's body. He ripped free of the men holding him, his knife flashing. He drove it into the snow, into armor, into the night itself. Then he lunged toward Lyra, his voice hoarse. "Let her go!" The soldier holding her sneered. "Too late, Marcus. This ends now." He raised his weapon, the barrel pressing against the child's head. Before Marcus could reach them, the crystal in the soldier's hand pulsed. A blinding light burst out, filling the valley. The snow itself seemed to tremble, the air crackling with energy. The soldier screamed, dropping the crystal as his weapon flew from his hand. Lyra fell to the ground, scrambling back into Marcus's arms. The light faded, but the soldiers were stunned, shielding their eyes. Marcus seized the moment, pulling Lyra close. He ran, his legs burning. His breath ragged, bullets chased them, sparks flying from stone. But he did not stop. He would never stop at the edge of the valley. Marcus found a narrow crevice between frozen cliffs. He shoved Lyra inside first, then followed. The gap was small, too tight for armored soldiers. Gunfire echoed behind them, but the hunters could not follow. The darkness swallowed Marcus and Lyra as they stumbled deeper into the cliffside tunnels. His chest heaved, blood dripping from his wounds. Lyra clung to him, tears streaking her silver cheeks. "Marcus, hurt," she whispered. He forced a weak smile, wiping the tears from her face with a shaking hand. "I'm fine," he lied, because the truth was clear. He was running out of time. But the child was still alive, and that was all that mattered. Behind them, the shouts of soldiers echoed. Above them, the sky burned with searchlights. But ahead in the deep tunnel, something strange glowed faintly in the dark, an ancient light pulsing from deep within the earth. Marcus narrowed his eyes. He did not know what waited there. But he knew one thing: they had escaped for now, and whatever lay inside those hidden caves, it was connected to the secret Lyra carried. A secret that was only just beginning to reveal itself. The tunnels stretched deep under the frozen cliffs. The air was cold but alive with strange light. Soft blue lines pulsed across the stone, glowing like veins of fire under ice. Marcus carried Lyra in his arms, his body weak, his wounds burning. But he kept moving one step at a time, because stopping meant death behind them. The echoes of soldiers still rang faintly. The hunters were close, but they could not yet reach the narrow passage Marcus had forced himself through. For now, he and the child had a small chance, a small breath of safety. As they entered a wider chamber, the glow brightened. The walls opened into a vast cavern, and in the center stood something ancient, a machine taller than any man, built into the stone itself, its surface smooth. Covered in symbols that shimmered faintly, it looked alive, as if it had been waiting in silence for centuries. Lyra gasped softly, her silver eyes wide. She touched Marcus's arm and pointed toward it. "Home," she whispered. Her voice was trembling but filled with awe. Marcus set her down carefully. He watched as she stepped forward, the crystal glowing in her hands. The moment the crystal neared the machine, the entire cavern lit up. Symbols flared, walls vibrated, and a deep hum filled the air. Marcus's jaw tightened. This was more than just technology. This was history. This was power. This was the secret her people had died for, and now it rested in the hands of a child. The sound of boots echoed behind them. The hunters had found a way inside. Their voices rang through the tunnels. "Marcus, there's no escape this time." Captain Rourke's voice, harsh and cold. "Hand over the alien. Hand over the crystal. You can still live." Marcus raised his rifle, stepping in front of Lyra. His body shook from pain, but his eyes were sharp. He shouted back, "You'll have to kill me first." The soldiers poured into the cavern, rifles raised, their lights cut across the ancient stone. The glow of the machine reflected in their helmets. Rourke stepped forward, his gun aimed at Marcus. "Don't be a fool. That child is not your daughter. That crystal is not your hope. It belongs to us. It belongs to humanity." Marcus's voice was rough but steady. "No, it belongs to her people. It belongs to her. And if humanity thinks it can steal it, then humanity has lost itself." Lyra clung to Marcus's coat, her small voice breaking. "Marcus, please." He looked down at her, her eyes filled with trust, the trust of someone who had nothing but still believed in him. And in that moment, Marcus knew his final choice had already been made. The soldiers raised their rifles. The order to fire hung in the air. But before the first shot rang out, Marcus turned. He pressed the crystal into Lyra's hands, his voice low and fierce. "Run. Don't look back. You keep this safe. You survive. You live." Her silver eyes filled with tears. Not without Marcus. Marcus forced a smile, though his chest ached. You are stronger than you know. You are hope. And hope doesn't die as long as you carry it. Gunfire erupted. Marcus spun, firing back, his body shielding the child. Bullets tore through the cavern, sparks and echoes filling the air. Marcus fought like a storm, his rifle roaring, his knife flashing when the bullets ran out. Each strike, each shot. Each drop of blood was a wall between Lyra and the soldiers. Rourke's voice cut through the chaos. Marcus, you can't win. Marcus growled, his voice like thunder. I don't need to win. I just need her to live. The machine behind them roared to life. The crystal in Lyra's hands glowed brighter than ever. The cavern shook, stone falling from the ceiling. A burst of light shot upward, tearing into the night sky above. The soldiers staggered, blinded. Their weapons dropping, Marcus turned once more. His eyes meeting Lyra's. Go! He shouted, and she ran, tears streaming. The crystal guiding her into the tunnels. Marcus stayed behind, his back to the machine. Bullets struck him one after another. But he did not fall, not until he was sure she was gone. Not until her small footsteps faded into the distance. His last breath left him with a single word. Safe. Outside, under the torn sky, Lyra emerged from the cliffs, the light of the machine still shining behind her. She clutched the crystal to her chest, her tears glowing in the moonlight. She was alone now, but not broken, because Marcus had given her more than protection. He had given her trust. He had given her a reason to believe that even in a galaxy of war, even in a world of betrayal, humanity could still choose to be something greater. Far away, the hunters regrouped, their voices filled with anger, but Lyra was already gone. Her small figure vanished into the endless snow, carrying with her the last secret of her people, and the memory of the man who gave his life to keep her hope alive. The legend of that night would spread. Some would call Marcus a traitor, others would call him a fool, but in quiet places, whispered in the dark, there would be another name, a name that mattered more. A human who chose to protect instead of destroy. A human who showed the galaxy that kindness could still survive war. And so the story ended not with victory, but with sacrifice, not with a soldier's triumph, but with a father's choice, the choice to protect a child who was not his, and in that choice to prove once again why humanity matters, why humanity is worth remembering, and why humanity must be feared.